Good day and welcome everybody to our third episode of ZIEHL-ABEGG Presents. This episode is called Carbon Neutrality for a Sustainable Future and will discuss how companies can become CO2 neutral and how modernization can help to achieve these goals. I have with me a group of selected professionals. Each of them is an expert in their field. I could not do justice, so please introduce yourself. Let us start with our online guest, Edmilson.
Hello guys, good morning. I'm Edmilson Alves. I am from Brazil. I am a mechanical engineer. I have a master's in environmental technology. I am the technical director of AirTech, and I have plus 20 years in the air and gases cleaning devices and solutions, and also ventilation systems for several industries and commercial buildings and so on. And I have worked with more than 20 countries around the world in nearly all the continents. So I'm very happy to be here. I hope I can do something to improve the discussion. Okay, thank you very much.
All right, let's go on with Arnold.
My name is Arnold Snetselaar. I'm the managing director of Technofil. Technofil is located in the Netherlands, and we are making air handling units sustainable. So I'm an expert to retrofit with ZIEHL-ABEGG fans.
Perfect. Let's go on with Klaus.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Klaus Hendel, engineer, aircraft engineer, so similar what we do with fans. I'm working for air conditioning business since almost 35 years. First development of products and fans, then I worked similar what topic today, energy savings contracting. Then I worked since 2001 for a professional institute, that means Fachverband Gebäudeklima, FGK, which is a lobbyist for air conditioning and ventilation. And since 2010, I took the parallel position from the European Ventilation Industry Association, dealing with all ventilation fans issues in the legislation and standardization.
Thanks, very happy to have you here with us. Ashish, last but not least.
Thank you for having me here. And hello everyone, my name is Ashish Rakheja. I'm a consulting engineer coming from India. I have been in this business for 30 years, designing electromechanical systems, dealing with the HVAC systems, fans, and also work on sustainability. So I currently am vice president at ASHRAE, US, and also presidential member of ISHRAE, which is the Indian Society of Air Conditioning Engineers, and do work as a technical committee chair for the Indian Green Building Council. I'll be happy to share my views on the subject and looking forward to the discussions.
Welcome, Ashish.
Thank you.
Additionally, we have Francesca Galeazzi. She's sustainability consulting lead at Arup, Germany. She couldn't join live, but we will show some videos of her during our session today. So, welcome. I'm very happy to have you all here. My name is Marco Rüttgers. I'm an area sales manager for ZIEHL-ABEGG, a motor and fan manufacturer. Without any further ado, let's directly jump into the first question, which is, what are the main challenges what we have with carbon neutrality in buildings? Let us start with our guest again in Brazil, Edmilson.
Yeah, well, first we need to start with some definition of what is carbon neutrality. And basically, I used to call the neutrality, which is pretty hard for us to define. I'm not a scientist, so I'll leave this up to them. So usually when I talk about carbon neutrality, I prefer to talk in terms of management of the resources that we use. So neutrality, it should be something like, let's reduce the impact that we have in the environment. So my entire career, I basically work with reduction of wasting and use the resources in the best way. So basically, we have two major challenges here. So first one, when we talk about CO2, is that we need to reduce this to the minimum impact for the planet, basically, to be more sustainable. And the second challenge is that people breathe environments with CO2. So we need to put this in terms of what are the safest levels for people to breathe good, or the process should be good in terms of CO2. So what's the impact that CO2 is having now in the microenvironment within the people? Basically, this is my largest concerns. We also have some gases generated from CO2 as well, and it's another issue. But major, it's reduced impact and also keep a good environment for people to breathe without CO2 levels too high. This should be my point of view.
So I'll take a stab at this one, Marco. And what I see that is the whole concept of carbon neutrality is something new that has come in. And we have to understand that carbon neutrality is not something that you turn on a switch and you are tomorrow morning carbon neutral. It's a journey to be done. It's a journey which is going to involve, let us say we all come from construction background. It starts from the point the material is extracted, to a point it is manufactured, to a point is designed by the designers, goes to the contractors, goes to the operation and maintenance people. Any of them who do not do the optimum work, we fail in meeting the objective, or our objective becomes a little difficult to reach. So it's a journey, it's a new concept. There is nothing difficult, just it's a new concept, it'll take time. It requires capacity building, it requires awareness, it requires regulations. You in Europe have an early start, but rest of the world is yet to catch up. I represent a large part of the world which is developing, and more than 60% of the world is developing today. So given that fact, there's a lot that needs to be done, and these are the challenges ahead of us. And there is the people buy-in which is needed, because it's ultimately the people who have to do it for the companies, for the governments to become net zero or carbon neutral going forward. So it's a journey to be done.
Good point. Arnold, what's your view on this?
Yes, the challenge with carbon neutrality in buildings are reduce gas and power, to insulate the building, and also to make air handling units sustainable. To do this, take care of your energy savings, to pay back it in 5 years, it's a possibility. To do this, we have a calculation system, ZIEHL-ABEGG calculation system, and we can give you an advice to calculate the return on investment, and you can see it is maybe in 2 or 5 years you pay it back.
Very good. Klaus, you want to add something to their opinions so far from the speakers?
Yes, I would say, Ashish said in Europe we are quite advanced. I would say we are somehow quite advanced on the use phase of carbon neutrality, on the energy efficiency, but on the whole life cycle analysis, I think we have to learn. One of the reasons is that the main challenge for our industry, for example, is the building stock, because European is mainly built, and we have to refurbish our buildings. And our interest is to interest society and building owners that they improve their building stock. So this is the challenge what we have, because everybody is more interested to keep itself running and don't touch the running system. And this is what the challenge is. So training and availability of experts for the building stock is a key issue and a key challenge what we have in Europe.
So I want to add to that something very interesting. So because you picked up the topic that in Europe, you have a challenge of existing buildings. And look at the developing world, our challenge is completely opposite. Our challenge is the new buildings. Just in India alone, we are talking of building nearly 1 Chicago a year for next several years, for more than a decade. So look at the construction coming ahead, and we need to be ready for that if we want to be carbon neutral. Go ahead.
That's right. Yeah. So we talked about the technical challenges, and we talked about people. I mean, at the end, the necessity for clarification here. Klaus, you also mentioned legislation.
Yeah.
What are the regulations that influence carbon neutrality?
For my business, I would say, for my ventilation industry, there are at least 3 regulations which are valid for us. It's Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, which is guiding, I would say, to energy or CO2 efficient buildings. in operation phase, not in the whole life cycle. That's what we have. We will implement as well life cycle analysis, but I think this is a future, a next step, which will come hopefully next year. Then we have renewable energies, which is a key topic. I would say for generation, heating and cold. I would say for the fan, it's only a secondary phase. And the key one for products is eco-design regulation, which is guiding a product to be, I would say, period by period more efficient and to replace old ones. I have an example which shows dramatically why is regulation needed. It's Q2. If you can add this slide and the desk. And if we look at that, we see how eco-design works. This is the fans, I would say, replacement from the first steps when the regulation starts, 2012. We see the very inefficient red ones, we see the weak efficient yellow ones, and we see the green ones, which are, I would say, complying with eco-design 2012, 2015. And then we planned in 2017 to have a new regulation, I would say more advanced efficiency, but this was on hold. So over 5 years, nothing happened. And you see immediately in 2018 what happened. If the regulation comes not in force, the market stops.
Definitely.
So, and that's exactly demonstrate that we need awareness, we need cost efficiency, but we also need regulation.
Very interesting you say that because, again, I'll give you an example of India. In our case, currently, since the regulations are I think, a little away. It'll take time for it to get done because our Prime Minister gave a commitment to become carbon neutral by 2070 just recently. And the whole India is waking up to that fact. Currently, the whole movement is being driven by the green building rating systems. So the rating systems are turning net zero energy, net zero water, net zero carbon, and net zero waste. So it's an interesting early days, but yeah, these rest of the world doesn't even have these regulations, what you are currently talking about. So. Yeah, so there's a long journey to be done here.
Very good.
Yeah.
So we discussed about these legislations. So let us go back to the technical side. I think some of our audience is interested in the technical side. So which impact has old ventilation technology on the total emission of a building?
I think it's not about any technology. We have to look at it from a point, whether it's products, whether it's design, whether it's operations. Everything in our conventional building is lagging behind from energy efficiency perspective. If you look at the old technologies, we worked with the fixed speed fans. We have worked with products that have evolved far more. So our existing building stocks, they have an old technology, energy inefficient equipment installed there. If you look at it from design perspective, we have worked on the fact that I come from ASHRAE. We have an ASHRAE standard 62.1, which is about indoor air ventilation. So when we talk about IAQ, we refer to that standard. That standard itself has evolved in last 20 years so much, and it shows to you how fast the ventilation industry itself is changing. So yes, our old techniques of design, of equipment, and the way we operate, because none of those equipment was smart. And today, we need smarter equipment to do the thing. So all of these together have been impacting what we say the energy efficiency or the energy consumption in a building, leading to a larger carbon footprint. And there is a lot that needs to be done now.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Edmilson, I would really like to hear your point on this one.
Well, it's funny because we're in Brazil, and geographically speaking, I'm very far away from you. So the technology here more or less evolved as much as we could bring it in. And we have in Latin America some historical aspects. So in the bottom line is that the old techniques or old technology, it's pretty common here. But the major impact with the old technology, I would say from the 2000s when Latin America, it started to be more developed. So we start to have something like plenum fans and also EC motors in the last, let's say, 15 years. But so far, it was just pulley and belts, was this type of fan technology that we have available. The problem with this is that we need to find a way to work with this. And this technology, it's not very much reliable. So consultants usually use an extra number of this. And this extra also is a kind of waste. So when you talk about old ventilation technology, we have waste of resources, very important resources. This is one thing that is very critical, and the other is, of course, the performance of the equipment itself, which is not the best. So I really enjoyed to see the slide from Klaus, because it was really good to see that it pays for themselves. Of course, you have less and less, and I think you don't have that gap to in Europe as we have here. Here the lack of technology, it's so big that if you pull the same graphic here, I don't have that, but if you could do this, probably the field for us to grow for better and more effective technologies, it's so big that could be a good trend here. So old technology means basically a waste of precious amount of energy and of course money.
That's right. I fully agree. Being in Brazil very often, we see that in technology there's still a lot potential what we can have there to discuss and to support our customers in finding the right solutions. But Arnold, you work with hospitals. What is the impact of this new technology here for the hospitals?
Yeah, for hospital, the new technology, the controllability of the fan is much better. You can see the energy consumption of the fan. So it's all very easy to increase and decrease the air volume, the air changes in the building. So all with all, it gives you a lower energy cost.
Klaus, you have the hard facts. I mean, can you give us some numbers which just underline all of these statements, what the gentleman gave us?
Maybe I can try to. If you add the Q4 slides, I can give you some information what in Germany we found out by energy inspection of air conditioning systems. Since 15 years, this is a mandatory issue, and the fulfillment or the enforcement is quite weak. So especially in Germany, we are not very good in enforcement. Only, I would say, 10% of all the systems are really valid. But if we look at the results, what have been given in Q4, the first time, we see that this was, I would say, an analysis done for existing ventilation air conditioning system. The average age of these units is 25 years old, so they are old as well. 50% are without heat recovery. Then the oldest one we found was 60 years old, from the 60s. So this is really the challenge what I'm talking about. But if you look at the more red formed line, in 50% of all the cases, a fan change was advised. So in 50% of all existing. In 50% of all demand controlled, as you said, was advised. So this is all the key topic with the fans. We have improved the control strategy, yes, but I would say, do you see if the most five highest points are linked to the fans and efficiency of demand controlled and adoption of that issue. So this clearly demonstrates that there is a lot of, I would say, CO2 savings, carbon savings in the building stock, which can be done very easy with a fan change.
Yeah. At Nielsen, Arnold, I mean, this is your daily business. What measures within the air handling and the ventilation sector can be taken to help to achieve the global goals for carbon neutrality?
Okay, so I would like to present a graphic or an equation. I'm sorry. I think there's there with you. I would like to show this and discuss this a little bit. Can you just present the equation, please? Yes, this one. So basically, this is a very common equation to calculate the energy consumption. You can find this in the REVA guidebooks. You can find this in ASHRAE. It's a very classic. So basically, E stands for energy consumption. Q is the airflow. The delta P is the pressure drop. T is the time, the operation time. And the Greek letter, I don't know how to say this in English. It's basically the fan efficiency. So it shows clearly what we can do with this. I'm going to use math to explain. So if you take a better efficiency of the system, the fan system, it's clear you're going to reduce your energy consumption. So this is number one, and I'm talking about what's easier from the easier to the harder, okay? So the easiest way is not the impact, because the impact is the Q. But anyway, the efficiency, if you increase the efficiency of the system, you can see clearly the energy consumption goes down, and CO2 goes down. So that's the very important. This is the job that we're basically doing here in Brazil, day in, day out. This is our daily job. The second thing is the delta P, which is basically the pressure drop on the system, the resistance for the airflow to comes. So it's what we usually make here. It's more common is to use air filters, HEPA filters, or so on. There are less, they're easier for the air to go through. So when you have this, of course, you reduce the energy consumption. If you compare to the efficiency, it's a fraction, but it still is important. But the third one is the Q, which is the airflow. And when we talk about airflow, this is basically when you have a hospital, you have a pharmaceutical, which is one of my areas of expertise, an automotive, or any other industrial or commercial operation, you need to change the air a certain amount of times during a period. So usually we say this air change per hour. And if you're able to reduce this air change per hour rate, you're going to reduce, of course, the energy. And this is a goal also. Because in order to do this, you need to have a reliable product or a reliable solution in terms of fan. You can rely on the data that is presented, so you can make the calculations. You can present to the people that work on the daily basis, especially from the assurance quality. You can talk to these guys so they can rely on the data that you present. And in the end, you together, all the disciplines can bring a solution for the companies to reduce their bill. This is pretty much important. So in order of importance for us is that it's a big challenge. In all of the applications, we have extra. Remember that I said we have that the waste of energy. This is related pretty much with the number of air changes per hour. So if you focus on these 3 points, the efficiency of the system, pressure drop of the system, and the airflow that you're supplying, I'm pretty sure that we can reduce a lot, by a third, I would say, in our reality. By a third, you can reduce the impact on the CO2 because we are going to consume less energy.
Yes, Edmondson, you are correct. Fuel-belt driving systems have a high energy consumption. So to make that more efficiency, use EC fans, valves with EC fans. What is also possible is to use different water temperature in the coils. And also the pressure drop, what you mentioned, is good to do. More surface in the intake air filter give a lower energy consumption. That's
Yes, I think already the change from belt-driven to direct-driven EC fans is a huge advantage. And then having the right control to really have the air what we need and not too much and not too less is all of these factors what Edmilson said, which will help us a lot in these terms. But Ashish, I really would like to have your point on this from the big planet India.
Okay, so let's understand first. We are all engineers here, and engineers at the end of the day talk the same language. 1 + 1 for us is 2 only, and 1 + 1 cannot become 11 or 111. Now, coming to the fact, what Edmilson said, what my friend here said, I think it's the same thing. But let me put it a little differently. I do wear a little a sustainability hat. So I'll say that it's time for us to look at things a little differently from a design perspective. It's time for us to go back to nature. Where I come from, where I see here in Germany today, you get 4 to 6 months of good weather. In India, we get high temperatures, 45 degrees centigrade, but we also get good winters and autumn and spring. We get 6 to 8 months of good weather. We have put ourselves so much onto the mechanical side of the ventilation and climate control that we have lost the touch with the nature. So it's time we move to what today the technical word that we use is a mixed mode ventilation, where we try to take the ambient as much as possible. Only when the ambient starts becoming hostile, you bring in the other technologies. It could be simple, putting the ceiling fans in the spaces back, and then finally going back to what we say the air conditioning. Now that itself can save 30 to 40% of the energy in the building. You apply technology after you have exhausted the possibilities which the nature is offering to you. So that is where, to me, the air handling business and the ventilation business needs to go. There are a lot of technologies. In design today, we talk about demand-based ventilation. We talk about variable speed, EC fans. It could even be putting UV lamps in our air handling units to keep the coil clean so the pressure drop is low, something like what Emerson is saying. It could be low pressure drop filters to the filter technology is taking, ESPs are coming in. There could be heat recovery. So all these are technologies which come in as a second step after you've done the basics. Two things I want to mention here. The first is the ventilation and the air handling industry has to start thinking about carbon labeling of their products, because that is the next step. If you don't label the product, how do we go ahead and announce the reductions that are taking place? And finally, it's time for the smartness to move into the equipment, because the whole industry of IoT, which is coming in, which I'll talk about maybe a little later, is all about smartness of the equipment because they operate in an efficient manner. So I think that's where we need to go.
But here I really need to ask a little critical question. Why should companies do this? What chances and advantages do these measures present to companies?
I would say, where is the choice? If you look at it, the governments of the world have already pledged to go carbon neutral. The dates are varying. Europe could be talking 2030, 2040, going to 2050. India is one of the last ones who's committing 2070, but I do know that we will end up doing it earlier. If the government has committed at the global level, global platform, who's going to implement it? It has to be implemented by us. And at the end of the day, construction industry accounts for 40% of the carbon emissions in the world. So we are the ones who will have to take the mantle. And that means all of us, whether it's product supplier or equipment supplier or designers or contractors, we'll have to do that. So there is no choice for the country, for the companies. The earlier you move in, better it is. I love to use this word. I say that if you do not adapt yourself to how the world is changing, you'll become a dinosaur. And dinosaurs are the ones which became extinct despite being one of the largest creatures. So you may be largest, you may be the biggest today, but unless you're nimble enough, you're fast enough to adapt to the changes that are coming in, you have to be out there. And at the end of the day, please remember, all of this makes business sense. Because I've had many examples of the companies who have come in and said that, look, we have introduced this low carbon product, and suddenly they found a lot of buyers coming in. I don't want to get into the detail of it as the time is limited, but I can tell you that the companies which are taking a position now for this, the markets are opening up for them much faster.
Yeah, definitely. Edmilson, you want to add something to this?
Actually, it's I believe the companies should drive this, but the thing is that companies are driven basically by two legs. One leg is the social part of the company, which is let's take care of people. This is our major business. We are in the taking good care of people business. And the second, of course, we want to do this in a profit way. So companies should drive this because they're going to take care of their employees, their customers, their whatever. It should be their business, their products, the environment. But of course, they should do this because it pays. So I'm just taking here some, I have to take notes. Klaus showed something that the equipment lasts in average 27 years. This is what Klaus showed in his slide. So considering this, if it takes 27 years and take the lifetime of this equipment or this solution operating for 27 years, if you consider that the equipment stands between 3 to 9% of this amount, which means that if you're going to pay an extra for a product that is going to take better care of your people, of your product, or of the environment, it's going to be nothing in 27 years. This is what I'm saying. People are not making calculations. It's really sorry to say that, I think people are more driven, but I don't know why. They're driven by the paycheck that they have to write on that moment, or their bonus. And I'm sorry to be so frank, rather than to take care, okay, I'm going to do this to last at least 27 years. It could be 50 in his life. So they're not thinking on the long term. They're only thinking on the short term. I think this is something that we need to adjust in the executives, in the people that are taking care of assets, because this is affecting people. That in the end is our primary job.
But also will be interesting for the companies is the return of investment of retrofit will be in 5 years. And also the carbon neutrality of the investment is interesting for investors. And there's also less work to do at the maintenance. No V-belt driving and longer lifetime of the bearings. Dus, that are all benefits. Er is wel one thing to need. To budget the budget to carry the investment is a lot, but with the high new energy prices, it should not a problem.
I think I just want to add here, very interesting you brought that point out, and I want to add to that point. Why should companies adopt this? What is there in there for them? We all work for developers. Developers mean building owners at the end of the day. And building owners, most of them take funds from the professional agencies. We borrow the funds from them and we construct. Today, the international agency, lending agencies are also asking the developers to come out with their carbon footprint reduction plan. The green, there are better, lower interest rates available on the green funds. So where is the choice? Everybody is going in that direction. Yeah.
But Ashish, we know you are passionate about net zero buildings. So what do you think are the benefits for the society, for the environment? I mean, what is your opinion about that?
So I've been speaking on the net zero energy, especially because energy has somehow been a concern right from beginning for last maybe about decade and a half. And to me, this is a natural evolution in going and harmonizing with the nature. So if you look at the net zero, typically the three things that we use mostly in our buildings is we say net zero energy, net zero water, net zero waste. And ultimately you're going towards the carbon neutrality, which is a larger subject which sort of integrates all of it. What is net zero energy? We are at the end of the day saying that you are reducing your energy consumption in building to an extent possible, largest extent possible, and then moving on to renewables. And you're not relying on what the government is going to give to you or what your city is going to give to you. You generate on your own. Look at the energy prices today. Doesn't it make sense to go to net zero energy? It makes all the sense. Come to water. Water is where you do not take water from the city. You capture, you run, you do everything. There is enough water which comes from the sky, especially in India. Rain gods give us enough. Now, where is water available? If you look at the Indian chart and look at the Asia, where more than 50% of the world's population is there, we are running out of water very fast. And there is no other place to go but to go net zero water. Look at the waste, the landfills, the amount of construction waste, the debris that come out. And we just keep dumping it in. Not only it has got a larger carbon footprint, but it's also a health risk to the people. So everything is a natural progression. And as I said, the carbon neutrality or carbon footprint reduction, let's say that rather than saying neutral, because neutral is a very strong word to be used, I think is all about steps in these directions only.
Yeah. Maybe I can add something on what Ashish said. At the end is the question what you calculate, and the cost and the nature, what you come back and what we wish is all the same. I can give you some examples, and this is I made this calculation on Q5, maybe if you can show, on our revised fan change projects, and it's calculated with all the full cost replacement. In new things, it's even cheaper. And for all this, we found a negative CO2 reduction cost. A negative CO2 reduction cost. That means win-win-win situation. That means the supplier can supply fans, can sell fans. The operator wins because he saves money, and the environmental wins because it saves CO2. And this is, I would say, the question is, whatever you calculate, what you have and the current issues, and if you come to a negative cost, everybody can only win.
So I remember the time when we had these green building movement came into the world. Everybody said green means expensive. Oh my God, I'm going to make green building, my cost of the construction is going to go up. Today, after 2 decades of green building movement that we have had in India, there are believers who say that green means lesser capital cost, lesser operation cost. So the net zeros and this carbon neutrality that we are talking, as I said, is a natural evolution. With the energy prices going up, with the resources not being available, it is making more and more business sense, just like what you said, is make more business. If you look at the numbers and actually work on it, it makes business sense.
Arnold. Why is it so important for hospitals to choose this?
Yeah, to retrofit the air handling unit, first of all, profit for the climate. And an environmental friendly organization is future-proof. It gives them also a stronger image. At this moment, to get new employers, it's a big problem. And I think to work for a sustainable company, it will be happy for that employee.
Definitely. So, like you said, employees, and I mean, we're talking about people. And people means cultures and countries. We asked Francesca if she thinks that Europe is leading in terms of sustainable buildings. Please roll the clip.
Well, when we are looking at what Europe is doing in terms of leading or not the green revolution in the built environment, I think as a proud European, no, I think we actually are leading the way. And we're leading the way because when I speak to my colleagues, for example, in Australia or in the US, they all asking what are we doing in Europe. So the feedback that I have from working in an international firm on many projects outside of Europe is that Europe is seen because of the policies that we have, because of the sophistication in the discussion that we have, because of the quality of the buildings that we build, is still seen as the forefront of the green building revolution. Then, of course, there are pockets of excellence in other countries. I don't want to say there's not. And for example, the US, there also a lot of action plans that are happening at more local level and not at national level. They are really driving the decarbonization of buildings and higher efficiencies. But the regulations that we have in Europe in terms of air quality, in terms of the environmental products declarations and the ban on potentially harmful materials, the regulations we have on indoor environmental quality, the energy efficiency. And then since the EU Action Plan for Sustainable Growth was published, also the regulations we also have to ensure that sustainability and financing go hand in hand are really placing Europe at the level that is difficult to see in any other country.
So a bit controversial. Ashish, Edmilson, do you agree?
Okay, I'll take a stab first, Edmilson, on this. Okay, I'll give it to her. Yes, Europe has been leading, and Europe has not only been leading here, they led from the point the green building movement, the sustainability, they had an early start. There is no denying about it. And the world today world always goes ahead and catches up thereafter. ASHRAE, incidentally, has released a position document on building decarbonization. There is a body which is working there within it. Standard codes are being developed. The entire world is catching up because everybody has now given a declaration and we are going in the right direction. Even in India, where I come from, the government has started talking about decarbonization. Our energy codes are being linked to carbon emission. The work is beginning in that area. So that's a part which I definitely agree that Europe has has given an early start. But I think not going wrong on the political front, I think we have to be also mindful of the fact in the given political scenario, Europe is going back, and we see the carbon emissions being given a little bit of a go by with all of that is happening in terms of oil, gas, and coal. I'll leave it there, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Edmilson, what's your point on this?
Well, I would say, well, it's very hard for me. If you say there are some polemics, I don't know if you hear about Brazil and Latin America, and it's pretty controversial. We have a clean energy. I think probably we're blessed with a land where we have basically water power. We don't have as much coal or biomass or oil to generate power. Basically, our power comes, the majority, nearly 70%, comes from water, wind, and now solar. So our matrix, it's pretty much, let's say, green. And this is awesome. But the problem is the waste that we create. For instance, I also work with refining of methane to generate power through landfill. So this is something that is starting to be bigger here. It's starting to be more focused. But of course, Europe is taking the lead on generating these technologies and so on. I'm not going to enter into the why Europe is taking the lead, because I think Ashish also mentioned something important, which is the nature of the energy or the power that you can have. We don't have this challenge, but of course we have a huge gap for us to grow in terms of sustainability that you in Europe are taking. We don't grow this because part of this we don't have a problem. When Ashish mentioned that you have 6 months of winter, if we have 6 weeks of winter, it's chaotic, because we have heat recovery. Only in the south of the continent, we don't have this. It's fully in the tropics. So our challenges are a bit different. But in the other hand, we also have some responsibility to the world in terms of take a good care of what we're going to send it to the atmosphere. Basically, we are nothing compared to what you have in China, India, or Europe. I mean, we are a big piece of land, and we have 1/3 of India population in the whole Latin America. Let's say, just to give you an idea of how big is how is the gap here. So our challenges are a bit different. The challenge for us actually is use what you're creating in Europe, what you're creating in India or China and in the US, and adapt to a very single situation that we have in our region. This is the challenge that we have. Learn from you and adapt to our condition, because it's not the same as you have there. So this is our major challenge. We're very thankful for what you're developing, but we also have our own challenges, our own discoveries to make,
Definitely. Someone wants to add something before we jump to the next point?
Maybe I can add some things. I do not fully give right what Francesca said. I think on the new building segment, I think we are quite good. We have good things. But Europe is not that uniform that it appears. In Europe, we have different climates, we have different behaviors, we have different expertises with the keys. But the key challenge on all that, as I said before, is the refurbishments. And Europeans love their old things, their old buildings. They keep it running as long as possible. And to convince people to refurbish in a way which is guiding us to carbon neutrality, lower. It's also good to keep the old buildings, I would say, stable. And this is also carbon neutrality somehow. But to convince the people to develop or to invest in their, I would say, further, procedure on the building is difficult. Currently in Europe, we have a 1% refurbishment rate. 1%. That means we need 100 years to get one fully around of all our buildings. And this is, I would say, totally jeopardizing our targets on 2045. We need to have 3% or even more refurbishment. And the key topic is to convince people on refurbishments on that.
I mean, all of you have provided very good insight, but I'm still not 100% convinced. Why do you think these measures are not executed or implemented on a global scale? I mean, we talked about Europe, but why is it not implemented on a global scale for everybody all around the world? We're all on the same planet.
Okay, so you're looking at me. I'll take that. So I'll say that it is not that they're not being implemented. I think the very fact that we are standing here discussing, debating, talks about the importance of the subject. We all have been doing in our own way. If you look at the green building movement that has been around, and why I keep referring to that is because that's a very successful movement which India has seen. We began our construction in, really speaking, in around 2000, around that point. And that's the time when the green building movement came in into India. And fortunately for us, in the last 2 decades, what we have made as buildings have been a good performing building, well performing building. And today, India boasts of a green building footprint of nearly 8 billion square feet, making one of the large green footprint in the world. Now, it's done, and there is more that needs to be done. Now, these are very early days of carbon neutral, the word that we keep saying. If you ask the word about what carbon neutral means, I think you ask 10 people, only 1 or 2 would come out with the right answer. 8 would not even know what you're talking about. I remember a seminar where I was at. I gave a talk on 1 hour on carbon neutrality. At the end of the day, somebody asked me, what are GHGs? What are greenhouse gases? Now, those are the challenges that we are dealing with. So these are just the early days. We will catch up because there is no choice. If you look at where the world is today at this point of time, climate change is a reality. We all realize that. I was speaking to my friend here from ZIEHL-ABEGG only, who mentioned that your snow days have shifted. You used to have snow in September, October. Now they go to October, November, and you get lesser number of snow days. Look at Pakistan, the weather extremes that have happened. Everywhere in the world, we are setting a new record on the weather extremes. So we understand this has to be done. Today, tomorrow, I think it has to be done quickly. So given that fact, I think it's time that we do capacity building, we do code standards, we learn from each other. And please remember, carbon neutrality is not about, or other not about something that Europe is doing it, take it, adopt it. It's not going to get done because every climate, every country has its own challenges. And those are the days where we are. I think they will get done, measures will get implemented. It's just that these are early days where the whole ecosystem has to be established. Neither the manufacturers are ready, nor the consultants are ready, nor the contractors are ready, nor the operation and maintenance people are ready. And as I said right in the beginning, net zero is a concept in which every engine has to fire, because if one engine misfires, the goal gets further pushed away.
Yeah, Edmilson, you want to add something from Brazil?
Yes, of course. I think it's more related, and this is not just from Brazil. I'm going to give you an example to illustrate what I'm going to say. I lived in Spain for a while, and I remember when I was in Spain, this was the mid of the 20s, first thing that got my attention was all the taxi drivers, not all the taxi, but the majority of the taxi drivers were driving a German-specific brand. I don't know if I can say the number or the name of the brand, so I'm sorry. But it's a brand that is also in the Formula One, so it's easy for you to understand who I'm talking about. So I spoke to the taxi drivers and say, hey, but this is not the cheapest, because in Spain they have good cars. They have also Fiat from Italy. Oh, I'm sorry, I said the name. But anyway, they have good cars. Cheaper than the German car. And I spoke to these guys and they said, you know what? Of course, they are cheaper, but the maintenance that I have to deliver to this particular car rather than to go to the others, it's different. Because if I make the calculations, this car, I'm going to stop this car with 300,000 kilometers, something like this, okay? So he convinced me that if he was paying even the double for this particular brand rather than to use the local brands, it's going to be cheaper for them and they are going to make more money in the end. I'm talking about Europe. I'm not talking about Brazil. I was in Spain for that moment. So what I'm saying is that, one, it's a cultural thing. It's a cultural thing. B, the two is because the culture is pretty much based on what we can see. For instance, if you see the label saying this car costs 100,000, this costs 200,000, you see it, but you don't make the calculations to see what is the best, the 100 or the 200. They don't make the calculations because they're going to do some effort, and they're going to believe on the effort. And this is the third thing, which is it's invisible. They need to see this. And we are in the risk business. And this is another point that I would like to bring. If they don't make the retrofits, as Klaus saying, Klaus, 1%, it's in Germany. This is crazy to me, you know? If you're 1%, probably here in Brazil, we are 0.1 or 0.01, the rate that you're mentioning, which means that we are only going to make the maintenance when it's over, when we have a problem, when it's broken. And this is something that we need to start to change. We need to help the people to see what they can't see. We have to, as an engineers, or because I think that's our mission, we need to help these folks to see what they cannot see. We need to help them to make calculations in order to take better decisions for them, for their people, and for the environment. And I like when Ashish said in the beginning, it's a journey. I think the problem for us, why this is not taken, because to take a journey, it's very hard. It's not something simple, because if it was simple, everybody would do it. So I think this is the major problem, and but it's changing. I also would like to give a word of hope. It's changing here in Brazil. 3 years ago, the government come with a new regulation where they established that the efficiency of the motor, not the fan system, but the motor should be higher than the so on level. So it's changing. The fourth thing is that what is the speed that we want? Because we can see this, but the majority of the people, of the customers, of the consultants or the constructors, they don't see. So for us, the challenge is to be patient and keep going, smashing the message, you know?
I got your point fully, and also Ashish, thanks for these points. But still, let's talk about solutions. What are solutions? What are possible subsidies from the government or even from the private sector?
So let me, Edmondson, before you say, okay, he wants to say something.
No, I'm sorry. I was going just to add this because, for instance, one multinational, huge company here, they have a global fund for CO2 initiatives. So if you reduce, they have a kind of pipeline. If you have initiatives that are going to reduce CO2, and they have some criteria, and then they balance this weight. And if your initiative, it's something that is interesting for them, if they found this from the headquarters in New Jersey. Okay, just would like to give you this example. It's happening. I'm sorry, Ashish.
No.
Okay, so good point, Wilson, and I wish you were here. We could have shaken hands on that and had a beer also. Okay, so I have a little different take on what could be the possible way subsidies you spoke about. Subsidies for what? For energy. Look at the energy cost today. If you educate someone that, look, by going to reducing your energy consumption, it makes business sense, why would the person not go for it? Why would that company not go for it? Whether it's water, let me give you an example of India. We have a challenge with energy. We don't produce enough because we are constructing even more faster. We have a lot of people, so there is a pressure on water. There is a lot of waste generation which takes place, and construction industry is a big contributor to all of it. And all of that actually at the end of the day make business sense, because when we save energy, our unit costs are nearly nearly 12 cents of what you're paying, equivalent to 12 cents of that is very high by Indian standard. So you actually get a good payback. My way, the way I have been designing and talking to my clients is I tell them the benefit that is coming out of it. and that always sells. Whether it's water, whether it's energy, and even the waste, there is money in that. I just want to talk about one example, something similar, which was done in India for green building movement. Why it became so popular? Government said no money subsidies. What we're going to do is we're going to give you 5% extra area that you can build up, provided you go gold or platinum ratings, and you go high on the ratings. And you see the result today. We are talking of 8 billion square feet of green space. So incentivize them, and when they adopted those measures, they suddenly found it makes business sense. And the developers or the building owners going further are repeating and going ahead and adopting them. So it's about involving them. And finally, I do want to say again, I come back to it, what Edmilson also said, I also said, it's a journey, and it's a journey which cannot be done alone. Since there's a lot of education to be done, the timelines are short, I think we need to collaborate and involve the professional societies. Whether it's in Europe, whether it's in India, whether it's in South America, it doesn't matter. There are architectural societies, there are contractor societies, there are manufacturing societies, there are plumbing society, and involve all those professionals, because at the end of the day, everyone has to contribute to reach this objective. So I think it's all about education. It's all about incentivization, which is not, I would not call it a subsidy, but sort of breaking down the barriers or the misunderstandings or the misconceptions which are there, and show them that it makes business sense today.
What does our contact to Brussels say?
Sorry, I would say in our context, mainly subsidies are incentives. that means it's a direct link. And I would say if my businesses, my members are asking me what can I do for, I would say, making technologies which are efficient, more attractive to the customers, then we have to invest or to invent a new subsidy, or let me say incentive, or promotion, or on what. So they like it very much because they can go out and show the things. Personally, I do not like so much, because it's a fresh flame which is burning out quite after 1 or 2 years if the budget is running off and on that topic. So and the incentives are mainly complex, and you have to apply quite early. You have a time plane, and then you cannot act quite quick. So from a subsidy, what I like is tax savings, because I would think we motivate people. Sometimes I say tax savings is more attractive than sex, whatever. So because people like to have tax savings, and we can motivate more possibly the financial officers of the companies, which are, I would say, can give the benefit to their head. Why not? We are engineers. We know what to do. We have the support. We need the support of the financial officers to invest in that topic. And if it go on the tax way, I think it can be a promising issue, and it can be even simpler and staying a long period. So I would say this is a promising issue, which is going in some member states of Europe. But let me say, go back to Germany. Germany likes to have a direct funding. I would say shifting to that would be a promising issue to save tax if you act on targeting sustainable things.
Good point. Arnold, what is your experience with subsidies?
That's what Klaus said. He prefers with tax reduction, and that's what we do in the Netherlands. We call it energy investment allowance. When you pay less tax when you invest in energy efficient technologies and sustainable energy. And for this year we have an amount of 150 million euros. And the average tax reduction is 11%. So that will help a lot.
I really like the discussions, but I need to play the referee, and I think we need to start wrapping up. So we have one more final question before we are finishing here. So what future developments are relevant to this discussion? Let's start with the video from Francesca, and then we will discuss her answer here in the audience.
So great question about future trends and what are the future observations in this field. I think the biggest change that I'm observing right now is that buildings are seen a lot more as material banks, as resources to preserve in the future, and therefore designing them for longer lifespans, designing them for flexibility so they can be kept at the highest value over time is something really important that has not been really at the forefront of the discussion of how we design and operate buildings for a long time. So kind of the introduction of circularity as a fundamental driver for the built environment is very welcome and very needed in our decarbonization effort. So bringing those ideas of circularity, smart buildings that respond to the evolving needs is another trend, which is very important. Having buildings that are connected to urban grids, so the idea of the building as a prosumer and not just a consumer, again, is a theme that we start to see coming out a lot more in the discussions, but the implementation is not quite yet there, but the future will be a lot more about smart, smaller microgrids interconnected and sharing resources rather than gigantic grids that are very difficult to balance and manage. So buildings with renewables integrated are sharing renewables with the other grids, for example, as a trend. And in general, electrification. So really turning our backs to fossil fuels. And maybe I might be a little controversial when I'm saying turning our backs to district heating systems if they're not decarbonizing fast enough. They need to be zero much faster than they are. I know this is a mega challenge, but they need to do that. Otherwise, as designers and consultants in the built environment, we're going to look at buildings that are literally fully electrified and not connected to very important district distributions. So this is a bit of my controversial challenge also for the discussion. I hope it will generate some discussion at your fantastic event. I wish I could be there. Thank you so much for having. Thank you for having invited me, even if remotely.
Okay, so I'll go. Yeah. Okay, so well, she covered everything if you look at it, and as I earlier said, engineers talk the same language. So again, let me be the devil's advocate and put it a little more simply. To me, at the end of the day, a well-designed building, I'm putting very simple words, a well-designed building which is poorly operated will not achieve the objective. And the vice versa, a poorly designed building which is very well operated doesn't meet the objective. What it means is if we have to move towards energy efficiency and net zero world, the last 2 decades that we have seen has all been about equipment efficiencies. To a point, maybe we'll talk about the air handling unit as a system efficiency, fan as a system efficiency, but we are missing the bigger point. All of these efficiencies in isolation do not mean anything if the whole building doesn't operate properly. If you look at the net zero world, when I say net zero, resilience, these are the new words which people are talking about, and carbon is one of them in the journey. They are all performance related. All the earlier rating systems of the buildings or earlier codes, standards that we refer to talk more about the equipment performances. So as now we are moving to actual performance of the building, we become responsible. Now, as a designer, where I start from, where the building is first conceived, I alone designing the best building in the world, I'm not going to achieve the objective unless the equipment manufacturer, the contractor supports me, because they also need to optimize the installation and the equipment. And at the end of the day, operation world over, wherever I have gone, I have spoken, the operation world is left far behind. Designs, the equipments, they moved so far ahead, but the operations have got left behind. And this is what I think all of it coming out in the discussion also. So until they catch up, again, you're not going to be net zero carbons or net zero out. So I think those are the important subject. Integrated design that we spoke about, all that is done. But integrated design needs to be put into implementation. And the next, the technological things that you're going to see is words like artificial intelligence, IoT. I know we have left out these big words and they need to be covered. IoT, Internet of Things, is a reality. The disruption in our construction world is not going to come from the people here, the techies. Is going to come from outside the construction industry, which is all probability going to be the IT industry, which is going to disrupt us. So IoT is coming, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, big data, all that is a reality. VR, AR, MR, the terms that we talk about, this is all going to be there. And finally, at the end of the day, carbon labeling is something which is going to be very important to our discussion. Maybe the next edition of this talk there. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks. Edmilson.
Yes. Well, I would like to come. I think what Francesca said, and also Ashish, is in the. It's of course important. It's the future, but I would like to conclude my part with 3 steps that anyone in this audience could take to do something better in the future. So I would like to take some holistic approach. I mean, with some challenges that are more practical, something that any people here listening can do it. And this is what I call the future at hand. So the 3 things is that first, determine the better ventilation parameters for the people so you can mitigate the risks of having CO2 while you're protecting the people, the product, processes, and the environment. So this is not something that we have enough material, we have a lot of information regarding. It's just a matter of establish this, put this as the guideline for your company or for you, and make sure that this is going to happen. So this is number 1. Number 2 is that what would be the technologies that you can rely to comply with those parameters? So this is a number 2, which is basically choose or pick technologies that are going to help you to achieve these parameters. So it's very simple. And 3, how can we develop better solutions? This is for us, engineers, consultants. How can we develop environmental low impact solutions while we keep those parameters of safety? So this is my summary, and the future developments. Determine what are the best parameters for ventilation, hygiene, considering the removal of contaminants or dilution or whatever. So let's pick this. 2, let's find technologies that are going to deliver this. And 3, let's discuss with all the disciplines, engineers, architects, quality assurance, product owners, product developers, whatever, everybody that is involved, what should be the solutions for us to change a little bit this and have higher impact on the bigger scale. So this is what I would like to add to this, to contribute with this topic.
That's a good point, Edmilson. But I think the future developments to be relevant as the controllability of a building, it will be more important in the future. So there will be sensors everywhere in the building for a healthy climate, fresh air, a healthy climate inside. Yeah, at the end, you are very relieved with that.
Klaus, I would also really like to hear your words, your final words.
I love everything what we said, but as you said, Ashish, we are engineers, we are building designers, we know what we have to do. What is our message to the consumer, to the customers? We try to use primary energy as a savings issue. Do people understand? No. We use the CO2 emissions. Do people understand? No. Then we try to use Kelvin, let me say, global warming targets, 1, 2, 3 Kelvins. Do people understand? No. A little bit. I would say people understand in Greenland when the glaciers are melting. People understand in India or Bangladesh will understand or in Netherlands when the seawater is rising. But here in Germany, we go outside 17 or 18. We don't care. So let's say of that. So we need a parameter which is addressing all, I would say, is motivating all the people. And what I have learned, sorry, for the last 3 years is In COVID crisis, we learned that health is interesting the people. We need to build healthy buildings, and exactly what you said. And now we see that cost is. So, and maybe we find another indicator which are interested in the people, or we reduce everything what we make to that two parameters, cost and health. And if we have cost efficient and healthy buildings, then we reach the target of sustainability. That's a bit my view.
But the question is, should this not be the basic? Should the buildings not be healthy? Should the buildings not make economic sense?
It must, but we need also a parameter for health.
Where did we get left behind there? I think that's...
Yeah, exactly.
And unfortunately, I have to end this discussion here, but before we really end the complete session, we have two questions from the audience, which I would like to get to you, to the speakers. So the first question is, do you consider solutions which captured air and removed the CO2? Can this be a solution? Who wants to take his...
it's point? Like saying, maybe you can take it, but I just want to say, it's like saying, I'll keep throwing rubbish on the floor and somebody keeps cleaning it up. This is what we are saying, that would you consider the captured air remove the CO2? Then why should we keep adding the CO2? Why don't we go ahead and look for it? So CO2 removal can be a short-term goal to address the larger issues that we are facing today. But ultimately, I think we need to, what Klaus said, that make healthy buildings. Healthy buildings means healthy environment at the end of the day, outside also. So I think let's look at the bigger subject. And when we look at the carbon neutral, and when we talk about construction industry being largest contributor to the carbon emissions, and if we were to correct that situation, what would happen? All of those things we'll say. I think we're addressing the topic of topic there. Yeah.
Someone wants to add something here to this question?
I would say, why not? If it's cost effective and it leads to negative CO2 avoidance cost, then we can add also these technologies. I would say for a ventilation system, reducing outdoor airflow, whatever, by reducing CO2, what we do in the aircrafts, which is that, or in the submarines, which is a technology which exists. But up to now, it leads to a higher CO2 emission and higher CO2 cost. And this is what, if the technology goes further, why not?
Thanks for the answer. I hope this answered the question of the audience. Question number 2. At the present time, we have a global crisis. Should companies and policies not prioritize renewable energy projects? I think this is a good question.
I can answer. Even renewables are not available unlimited. So if we go for solar, if we go for wind, if we go for geothermal, if we go for anything, it is not unlimited. It's limited by space, it's limited by materials or whatever. First of all, the principle must be efficiency first. We have to do the things we have to do most efficient, and the rest what we need, we have to do most possible with renewables. But at the end, renewables are not unlimited. That's I would say, not the story.
So I just would say that yes, renewable makes sense. They have to be adopted. And Klaus, I agree with you, they're not unlimited. There is we consume in the world a huge amount of energy, and you just cannot turn a switch and tomorrow morning start using 100% renewables. That's not going to happen. The shift is begun. Like India, I can say, has committed that, our Prime Minister committed that by 2030, 50% of our power that we are consuming in India, which is huge, is going to be coming from renewables. So that shift is happening. The companies are adopting it, but it's not like tomorrow morning it can be done. There is a business sense today. Especially when the country where I come from, it makes a lot of sense to go in renewables. The cost of renewables is 1/3 of what the city sells us at. So yes, it makes sense, but again, the shift is gradual.
Arnold, do you want to add something to this question and the answers of our speakers?
Yeah. Now we talk about the renewable energy, but first we have to talk about the crisis and look at the crisis and priority that, and how can we make a solution for that way?
Okay. All right. I mean, thank you again for your participation. It was really an honor to talk to you guys here at Milson in Brazil. Also, thanks to Francesca for the videos. I think it was a very good discussion. Please check out our landing page. We will be posting this event very soon there. For sure, if you have any further questions, don't hesitate to contact us at any time. I hope you enjoyed it and stay safe, everybody. Goodbye.